Have you ever looked out at night and looked up at the stars and you're wondering, where'd all those stars come from? Or you get out there and sometimes you watch in springtime, you wonder, where'd all these leaves come from on these trees? They weren't there last winter. Everything looked dead. Nature has always been puzzling and interesting for people. Well, today we're going to be talking about, in the biblical stories, about how the world came into existence. Now, the biblical story we think of, sometimes, well, God did this, so it must have been first. No, there were other biblical stories that are older than what we have. From Egypt, there was water covered the earth, just like we're going to read in our scriptures. And that water was turbulent, and something in their thinking was, if it's turbulent, it does not exist. And we're going to see that in chapter 1 in just a moment. But in Egypt, there was a voice came up out of the water and said, I am Atun. And then another voice came up and said, I am water. And then Atun calmed the water, and when it calmed the water, then it came into existence. For us, anything that we have is in existence. But for them, it had to have a purpose, and it had to have calmness about it. Couldn't be agitated, couldn't be chaos. Well, there was another story in Mesopotamia, also, that there was a god, the god's name was Marduk. And there was a sea monster. There's something stirring up the seas all the time. There was a sea monster, and the sea monster's name was Tiamat. And Tiamat had the power of the north wind and the south wind and the east wind and the west wind. And Tiamat decided that I'm going to just blow this god away. But Marduk was ready for it. So when Tiamat opened her mouth to blow that wind, Marduk had a bow and arrow. Isn't that strange? Bow and arrows back then. And shot an arrow down into her inside and killed her. So then the water was calmed. Well, it's going to be calmed also for us in Genesis. But in Genesis, it's not going to be a battle. It's not going to be any bows and arrows or any monsters to conquer. God just speaks, and that's it. Now, also there are two different stories. The first one was what we have in chapter 2, and everything turned out bad. Then Adam and Eve, they ate of the forbidden fruit, and they got kicked out of the garden, and they had all kinds of problems, and they had one boy, and he killed the other one, and it was just not a good news report. But then there was a priest from down in Jerusalem. He decided he wanted to write his own story, and that other story didn't show how great he was. So this priest wants to show the power that the priest has, because it all comes from God, and the priest is the one that does the work for the God. So let's look at chapter 1. And when you notice this, every time it refers to the supreme being, it's going to be God, 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 God. In chapter 2, no, it's Lord God, Lord God, Lord God, Lord. Now, it didn't just happen that he decided to change the way he's going to talk from God to Lord God. And it didn't just happen that in chapter 1, the earth is covered with water, and in chapter 2, it's all dry land. Like maybe the writer lived in maybe a desert that thought about this one. About chapter 2, everything was not even a plant. Okay, let's go now to chapter 1 in our Bible in Genesis. We're going to start from the very beginning, and it says in the beginning. That's the beginning for us in this chapter. So here we go. Chapter 1 says, the story of creation. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth, this is what happens. And the earth was without form and shape. Now, remember that? He's created the world. Let's finish that just a minute. With darkness over the abyss and a mighty wind sweeping over the waters. Here's the earth. Here's the water. Here's the wind blowing over. But remember, look here what it says. And the earth was without form or shape. It was void. It had chaos in it. So for them, it didn't exist. But God is going to bring about calmness out of chaos. And that's what creation meant for them. For us, creation is to take two things, or maybe for God, take nothing and make something. This is not saying take something and make something else. It's saying there's something there, but it's not. It's agitated. There's chaos. Chaos can't exist. So the earth didn't exist. It was without form and without any shape. For us, anything that is has to have form and shape. You can see a tree, it's got a shape to it. It's got a form to it. But if you're looking at it in their eyes, if you're looking at the earth and it's covered with water and it's agitated, there's nothing there. It can only exist when it has a purpose and when it has a form. It's got to be used for something. So these things that God is going to create, they're going to have a form to them. In verse 2 again, and the earth was without form or shape, with darkness over the abyss. Abyss means there's nothing there. There was something there, but it wasn't in order. And a mighty wind was sweeping over the waters. Verse 3, then God said, now you're going to hear God, 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 God. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. See, there's no story about this. In chapter 2, there's a story. Adam does this, and Eve does this, and they have this going on. And it's Cain kills Abel and all of this. There is no action here except from God. Make the sun, boom, there's the sun. Make the earth, boom, there's the earth. No plot. No second opinion. God is in charge of everything. Then God said, this is verse 3 again. Then God said, let there be light. And what? There was light. God saw that the light was good, and God then separated the light from the darkness. He didn't do away with the darkness, because that darkness is like for evil. He didn't do away with it, but he controlled it. God is in control of everything for them and for us. Verse 5, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Evening came and morning followed, and that was the first day. Now you notice our day starts in the morning, and theirs starts in the evening. When morning comes, that's the first day. It's gone by. Then God said, let there be a dome in the middle of the waters to separate the body of water from the other. And God made the dome, and it separated the water below the dome from the water above the dome, and so it happened. So for them, he knew there was water up there because it comes down sometime in the form of rain. Something's holding it up. So it must be a dome. God must have a dome up there that we would call a sky. And God called the dome sky. Now this is a writer writing this. Evening came. That's the first part of the day. Evening came, and morning followed, and that's the second day. Then verse 9 is, then God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into a single basin, so that the dry land may appear. And so it happened. The water under the sky was gathered into its basin, and the dry land appeared. It's just like there's a basin over there, so we're going to put some of this water over there. The land didn't have to come up. They just lowered the water. Verse 11 says, then God said, let the earth bring forth vegetation, every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree on earth that bears fruit with its seed in it. And so it happened. If God says it, it's happened. No storyline, just a fact. Just there it is, and there it is. Verse 12 is, the earth brought forth vegetation, every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree that bears fruit with its seed in it. God saw that it was good. Now we're going to turn to the next page. Then evening came, so we're going to have the next day coming. Evening came and morning followed. That was the end of the third day. Then God said, let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate day from night. Let them mark the seasons, the days, and the years. Now this is an interesting part. And serve as lights in the dome of the sky to illuminate the earth. And so it happened. God made the two great lights, the greater one to govern the day, and the lesser one to cover the night, and the stars. So he's making the sun and the moon. So a scientist would say, hey, what was the first day like, and the second day like, and the third day like, if he didn't make the sun and the moon until the fourth day? Well, some scholars say he didn't want to put the sun first because there were people that worshiped the sun, and he didn't want this to influence them in any way. So he puts it the fourth day. Verse 17 says, God set them in the dome of the sky to illuminate the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God said that it was good. Chapter 1 is all about good. It's rewriting chapter 2 that everything was bad. Verse 19 says, evening came and morning followed, fourth day. Verse 20, then God said, let the water teem with the abundance of living creatures, and on the earth let birds fly beneath the dome of the sky. They can fly under that dome that's holding up all that water up there. They didn't have jet airplanes that could find up, or spaceships. They'd have to think, hey, we've got to go through that dome. We're going to need a door. Verse 21 says, God created the great sea monsters. There's going to be sea monsters, you can pretty well sure. And all kinds of crawling and living creatures with which the water teems, and all kinds of winged birds. And God saw that it was good. And he didn't have to fight that monster. All he had to do was put a monster there, and it would be good. Verse 22 says, and God blessed them, saying, be fertile, multiply and fill the water of the seas, and the birds to multiply on the earth. Verse 23 says, evening came and morning followed, and that's the fifth day. Verse 24, then God said, let the earth bring forth every kind of living creature, tame animals, crawling things, and every kind of wild animal. And so it happened. God made every kind of wild animal, every kind of tame animal, and every kind of thing that crawls on the ground. And God saw it and said, it was good. Verse 26 says, then God said, let us make, and here we come, let us make human beings in our image. Our image. Who's up there with God? Maybe the Trinity? Maybe some sort of a heavenly council? More than one person, more than one creature. Let us make human beings in our image, after our likeness. Now that doesn't mean God has a beard, or I don't guess, or a mustache. I think it's spiritually we're made in God's image. And we're the only ones, not the cows, not the turkeys. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the tame animals, and all the wild animals, and all the creatures that crawl on the earth. Everything, man and woman, humanity, is supposed to have power over, dominion. Verse 27, God created mankind in his image, man and woman. Now, he didn't create Adam and Eve until chapter 2, but chapter 2 was composed before chapter 1. This is not a historical, chronological history book. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them, man and woman. 28, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fertile and multiply and fill the earth. Subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every living thing that's created on this earth. And then also God said, see, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the earth, and every tree that has seed-bearing on it, to be your food. They were not supposed to eat meat. They can't eat meat yet. That's coming later. In their thinking, they can only eat fruit, vegetables, and seeds, and nuts. Verse 30, and to all the wild animals, all the birds of the air, and all the living creatures that crawl on the earth, I give the green plants for food. And so it happened. So people and animals were to eat the same thing. One animal is not supposed to eat another animal. We're not supposed to eat animals, or they were not supposed to eat animals. And verse 31, these are men and women sitting around a campfire maybe thinking, where did all this begin? How did it get here? 31 says, God looked at everything he had made and found it very good. And evening came and morning followed. And when morning gets here, it's the sixth day is over. Morning starts the next day. Now that's what they were looking at. That's the end of chapter 1. In chapter 2, everything's going to be bad. There's going to be murder. They're not going to get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And it was just a storyteller, just told about how things just wove along. And in chapter 1, there's no story to it at all. It's just, this is for men, this is for women, this is for the plants, these are for the animals. And everything was told from a powerful point of view where there is no second opinion. It's just, God says it, and that's it. Well, it's going to be interesting to get to chapter 2, because we're going to find it's going to be a whole lot more interesting, because it's going to be a story to it. Not going to be a happy story all the time, but it's going to be a story. So I'll be seeing you there in the next chapter. It'll be chapter 2 of Genesis, and we're going to find out. Now, we already found out there's 2 different writers when we were back there in the flood. And remember, in that flood, it was God, 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 God in chapter 6. But in chapter 7, it was Lord, 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 Lord. And now here we got Lord God together. So where do we get that, I wonder? That's going to be an interesting thing to find out. We got Lord and we got God, but now in chapter 2, we're going to have Lord God. I think you'll enjoy that. Have a wonderful day, and peace be with you.